What is up, all you beautiful people? It is I, AkemiTCG, back here with a brand new video. And I realized I've never made this type of video on this channel before, where I literally just talk about how I feel about certain decks on the tier list. So this is going to be a comprehensive tier list of how I feel during this current format. What decks are tier 1, tier 2, and rogue. And right off the bat, there is no decks that are tier 0. There's literally not a single deck that's so good that's going to wreck everyone, right? So tier 0, abolish. Anyways, let's start the video. First, we have Emancipators. Most of the time, you're going to see a Prank Kids version. That's why you don't see the Prank Kids picture right here. Most of the time, you're going to see a Prank Kids version of the deck. It works really, really well, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as good as some of the other decks I'm going to talk about. They do combo off. They do make really cool end bards, but there are certain choke points. Also, Nibiru at the right time messes up the deck really, really bad. So I just put this at tier 2. Next, we have Altergeist. Altergeist is one of those decks that is literally trap deck. They flip traps, they activate traps, they use multi-faker on you. They almost always have multi-faker and impermanence in the hand, so this mess people up. It's just not a good time. However, it's just not as good as tier 1, but I don't think it deserves to be in the rogue category, since there's a couple of notable tops with Altergeist players. So I feel like that deck should be at tier 2. Atlanteans. Honestly, I know this deck hand rips. I actually don't know what else this deck does besides combo and hand rip, to be quite frank. So I apologize to any of you Atlantean or water players out there. I just don't have much knowledge of the deck, but I haven't seen a lot of decks do, or a lot of people do anything with this particular deck. So I am going to put it, the first one, in the rogue category. Did you know the average AkemiTCG subscriber wins more duels? Could be you. Could be you. Next, we have Phantom Knights / PK / Burning Abyss. This deck is very good in theory. Well, it's not good in theory, but it's just a good deck. We do have the trap card that negates effects, which is really good. They have a lot of recursion from the graveyard. I haven't seen any super strong tops with the deck, but I do not believe this deck deserves to be in the rogue tier. So I'm going to put this at tier 2. Next, we have Code Talkers. My friend suggested me to put this in. I don't really have much opinions about the deck. I actually don't know how the deck works. I know this spam out a whole bunch of cyber monsters really fast, but I haven't seen anybody legitimately top in like one of the higher remote duels or one of the LCS events with it. So I'm gonna have to put it in rogue, but I do acknowledge that, you know, this deck is a thing, so it's gonna go in rogue. Shaddolls. This deck's good. Schism's good. The recursion from the graveyard is good. Shaddol Fusion, if they don't ash it, is good. Knee Shaddol Genius, very good card. And they're able to play a ton of traps with this deck. Obviously, Schism, again, I want to reiterate, it's a really good card. With Winda, a deck's very strong. You can play it with Dogmatica. You can splash it in as different engines. And I feel, or not I feel, but I know this deck is, in my opinion, going to be the first tier 1 deck. So let me move this a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Looks better. The first tier 1 deck I'm going to put there. It's a deck you should be afraid of if you don't have any outs to it. If you're not sure how to play it around that particular deck, you should be afraid of Shaddolls. Next, we have Cyber Dragons. Deck's cool. OTKs, it makes infinity. And it has some recursion in the graveyard, but I haven't seen any representation as of late for Cyber Dragons. I'm not sure if there's even a possibility that they could win one of these formats, unless something like crazy happens where they have either a person makes a really skilled choice, they put in some spicy text in the particular deck. But Cyber Dragon, I put it in rogue. It works. It works when it works. When you make infinity and you set a whole bunch of floodgates, it works. But it's just not as good as the decks in tier 2 or tier 1 right now. Heroes right now is it loses the draw like always, and it has some critical choke points. Initially when I played against heroes, I didn't really know how to beat the deck. I was like, oh, I just keep hand trapping you, I need beard you, but I still lost. But once you figure out the choke points of the deck, once you figure out, when they send for cost for this to get this onto the field, then you do this, you do X, Y, and Z. Once you figure out the choke points, and once you realize that this deck hard loses the draw, when I say hard lose, I mean like severely hard lose to draw, that I would put it in Rogue. Otherwise, it has potential. It OTKs really fast, so you know, if it works, it works, you know. Next we have Orcas. I haven't seen Orcas do anything in a while, ever since Harp got hit. Mech Knight Girsu is still gonna be some money, but honestly I had more faith in this deck and the player base that built the deck, because a lot of Orcas players are very like die-hard Orcas players, but for me personally, I just haven't seen any results. I could be wrong. Let me know down in the comments. I could be wrong, but I just haven't seen any results from Orcas players as of late, so I'm going to put this one in Rogue tier, unfortunately. Dogmatica. So if you're playing Dogmatica Invoke Eldritch, or Dogmatica Eldritch, Live Twin Dogmatica Eldritch, I think it would be tier 1. If we're playing just Dogmatica itself, I put it in tier 2, because most of the time they're playing with Alistair package. It does what it's intended to do. The deck itself is extremely consistent, especially with Nadir Servant, but otherwise it just doesn't offer enough gas to be able to beat some of these tier 1 decks consistently. The deck itself, you can very consistently open up specific cards you need for your combo species, especially with Prosperity and especially with Desires, but it just doesn't hold enough gas to be able to control some of these tier 1 decks. Dragon Maid. So a lot of people are sleeping on Dragon Maids. They've been sleeping on it for a long time. I'm telling you, Changeover, Chamber, and Dragon Maid Tiding, those are phenomenal cards. They can make an Omni Negate extremely fast, and if your opponent just keeps it on the field, you just get more and more resources during each standby phase. And pretty much this deck snowballs really hard. It's almost kind of like Eldritch, where they can grind extremely hard. The longer the duel goes, the more recursion the deck has, unless you just start banishing like everything they have on the field. I put it in tier 2. This deck's good. Like, genuinely believe this deck's good. It's also topping a lot in OCG right now, so keep an eye on that as well. Eldritch. You're playing any variant of Eldritch, tier 1. As recursion, we have all the cards literally still at 3. Eldland, Sanguine, etc. Deck's good. Deck's relatively consistent. Not as consistent as Dogmatica, but it has so much more grind game. It grinds so unbelievably hard that this is like, I'm pretty sure this deck, Shadow's and also Dragon Link, is the reason why Ice Dragon's prison is $60 right now. So keep that in mind. It's just really strong. Infernoble, I haven't seen them do much, and I'm actually in a rock and a hard spot, because I'm not sure if I want to put it at tier 2 or Rogue right now. Just basically, ISO.deck is very good in every aspect of ISO.deck. So I'm thinking, oh, this is probably the toughest one I have to do. I want to put this one at tier 2, because I feel like just being able to splash I sold, getting a whole bunch of equip spells to the graveyard, and special summoning a warrior from the deck, and just comboing off of Needle Fiber and the Rodon combo is still very viable. This deck can play through a plethora of hand traps, granted that they have enough extenders in hand, so that's why I put it at tier 2. Deck works, even without the Link Cross combo. It's been working really well, but you just don't see it a lot because you can't reliably make the negates. But Charles itself is a force to be reckoned with. Next we have Alistair. Same idea with the Dogmatica package. If you're playing Alistair, you're most likely playing the Dogmatica package with it. Most likely, I'm not saying 100% of the time. And I would just put this at tier 2. It's consistent, but it just, one Macabre. Obviously, you can cheese with the Purgatrio with the Droplet, but one Macabre is just not enough right now. Not in this format. Madoche Rogue. It can combo off. It can make the board and then have some promenades face down. But other than that, it hard loses to Ash sometimes. It just hard loses to specific hand traps. That's just how it is. And sometimes it even hard loses to Cosmic Cyclone. So hard loses the Lancia, so you can't banish off of I believe Hoot Cake, or Angeli's the tribute. Oh, I believe off of Hoot Cake. So Because it hard loses to certain hand traps that a lot of people playing right now, I just can't see it above Rogue right now. Unless something changes with the deck. Maybe if they... I think the deck is good as is because they have an additional normal summon, but unless something hard changes with the deck and they don't just hard lose to Ash sometimes, I can't see it being higher than Rogue. Same with Marincess, the deck also hard loses to Cosmic. If you Ash them at the right time, your opponent also dies too, so... Deck's good in theory, because Marincess makes a Link 4 that's just straight up unaffected by card effects, as long as you control the face of field spell. Once that field spell is gone, that Link 4, it's acceptable. You just get rid of it. So, I mean, on the bright side, they also have their own imperm too, so that's something to keep in mind. Dinos are really good. They've always been good because misses at 3, but it's gonna go at tier 2. It just doesn't keep up with some specific hand traps. Obviously, if you Ash them when they banish their miss and they don't have that call by, or if you Lancia them, you D-shifted them. There's so many hand traps that people mania right now that can hit Dinos that I can't see it being tier 1. If people weren't playing those hand traps specifically, Dinos would be tier 1, but that's just how I feel about the deck. It's just tier 2. A lot of people are playing the hand traps that play around Dinos, and that's not specifically for Dinos, it's specifically for tier 1 decks too, so it just loses a little bit harder. With Paleo, I know traps are good right now, but I haven't seen that much representation in terms of people topping with this particular deck, so that's why I'm putting it in Rogue. It has potential. Dynamiscus is a good card. The other Paleo cards are extremely good, but I feel like it's just a tad bit too slow compared to like even against like Elvish, Shaddoll, Dragonlink's really fast, and this deck itself comparatively is really slow, and especially if Paleo's going second, they might get just slapped by these tier 1 decks. Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon's a really strong card. The only real viable out is like a Kaiju and I believe UCT because they have the same amount of attack, but I haven't seen much representation with it. That may change in the future, but as of right now, I consider it Rogue. With Sky Striker, I'm trying to think if I've seen much representation with it. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen that much representation with it, so I'm gonna have to put it at Rogue as well. Especially right now with Dragoon running around. I know not too many people are playing it, but if you're playing like something like Subterra or whatever, and Dragoon is on the field, the Sky Strikers have a really hard time outing that card. In general, they just have a really hard time outing that Dragoon, so that's just something to keep in mind as well. Salamangreats, I haven't seen them do anything, so that's gonna be in Rogue. Next is same with Pendulum. I haven't seen many things happening with Pendulum, so I'm gonna put that at Rogue as well. Next, Subterras. Because Subterra did get that one remote duel win, I'm gonna have to put it at tier 2 because they just basically Dragoon Floodgate.deck, and it works. It works very, very well. Rika's, I don't need to talk about this. I talk about this deck all the time. It's Rogue. It's not the best deck. There's just so many other decks that do better things with less cards needed, and they don't lock themselves into plants. So put this at Rogue. Time Thieves. So I've seen a lot of OTKs with this deck. This deck is very budget at the moment. I would put it at Rogue right now. I just need to see more representation for me to push it to tier 2. Next is Dragon Link, or any Rocket card with Dragon Links in general. Tier 1. It just probably, a lot of people argue it's the best decks in the format. I will argue that these 3 decks fundamentally, Shaddoll, Eldritch, and Dragon Link, do fundamentally different things. So you just can't compare apples and oranges, okay? Dragon Link can play right through hand traps. Eldritch just literally is for the long grind game and can keep up with pretty much any of the other decks, because when Eldritch revives, can't be destroyed, I believe, and then it gains 1,000 attack. And then with Shaddolls, the window lock is still really strong. It's not even a lock, but Schism, the fact that it also banishes something, is very, very strong. So these 3 decks are pretty much almost like the Bermuda Triangle right now. Bird Up / Trapigate, right now I put it at tier 2. Loses to specific hand traps, especially Lancia. Nibering it at the right time works as well. So that's why I put it at tier 2. Bird Up is still a very, very good deck. I'm not saying it's a bad deck, but it loses to these specific hand traps. I've seen Virtual Worlds do a couple things here and there, but I honestly haven't seen too much representation, so it's going to be at Rogue. And last but not least, we have Zodiacs. I know I missed a couple decks. You want me to talk about these specific decks? Let me know down below if there's any other ones. But Zodiacs, tier 2. Just Zeus.deck is just good. Zeus is just a really, really good card, but it's just not good enough to be tier 1. Not good enough as these other 3 decks. Anyways, that is it. That's all I have for the, I guess, meta tier list? Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta tier list. And I hope you all enjoyed this first one. If you want me to make more of these, please let me know down below. If you have a question about a specific deck, or if you just have a comment, complaint, etc., put it down below. I am AkemiTCG. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
The world ends now.